Hi, I'm Justin Barrett. I'm president of Blueprint 1543. I'm a former university professor and psychological scientist. And in this episode, I want to talk about sleep. As you probably are aware, we've got a sleep shortage in our world, our culture. It's estimated that about a third of U.S. adults, and it's similar in Europe as well, and other parts of the English-speaking world, about a third of Americans are sleep deprived. They're running a sleep deficit. And this is associated with all kinds of bad health outcomes. It's associated with a shorter lifespan too. People who are sleeping less tend to die sooner. I have your attention. But the question is, how much sleep is enough sleep? And really, is sleep that big a deal? I know it's countercultural to talk about sleep. We almost celebrate lack of sleep. We get excited about staying up late. We have a culture where if you sleep a lot, that's considered a bad thing. It's a negative, whether you are sleepy from the Seven Dwarfs or Snorlax from Pokemon. The power of sleep is not considered a good thing. It's kind of a liability at best. And it's not a surprise coming from our sort of Judeo-Christian heritage. For instance, a sampling of the Proverbs from the Old Testament. Oh, go to the ant, O sluggard, observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief officer or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provision in the harvest. That was Proverbs 6:6-8. Or Proverbs 12:27. A lazy man does not roast his prey, but the precious possession of a man is diligence. Proverbs 15:19. The way of the lazy is as a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is a highway. This one's funny. Proverbs 19:24. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish, but will not even bring it back to his mouth. Imagine falling asleep while you're eating. With that as our heritage backdrop, and especially channeled through the sort of Puritan cultural work ethic and everything else, the founding of the American society anyway was based on hard work. And sleep seems to be the opposite of hard work. Let me suggest that's not true. Sleep is essential for hard work. If you start poking around at very highly successful people, you find out that most of them know how to sleep. They sleep well. They find a way to work sleep into their lives. It's critical for our well-being and our flourishing. Scientists, unsurprisingly, have been very interested in sleep, how much sleep is enough sleep, and what leads to good sleep versus bad sleep. So first on the question of, well, how much sleep do we really need? Clever experiments have been done by doing things like putting people into a basement laboratory with no windows so that there's no outside light, and for a long period of time, and seeing, left to their own devices with nothing sort of demanding that they do, how much sleep do they tend to gravitate toward. And in studies like that, we seem to see a number of adults gravitating towards about 9 hours of sleep, actually. Now, that may be a bit of an outlier because it's an artificial kind of environment. It lacks, the jargon is, ecological validity. But nonetheless, studies like this and cumulative similar types of studies all point to the idea that probably what's best for humans, given the kind of animals we are, is to get about 8 hours of sleep a night. You've heard the 8 hours, so about a third of our day should be sleep. I said 8 hours a night, I should say 8 hours a day, because that sleep can be divided up between what we're doing at night and then naps. Scientists who study sleep have noticed that we have different, what are called circadian rhythms. Our body powers down and powers up at different times of the day. And typically we've got a power down right after lunch, in that sort of traditional siesta time where it's time to take a nap. And so you might get a little bit of sleep there and then sleep at night. And putting those together, 8 hours would be a good target. It's not the case that young people need less sleep, that somehow being a teenager makes you invincible and unworthy of this mere mortal thing called sleep. Even though we might treat our teenagers and our college students that way, it's a really bad idea because it turns out our need for sleep goes up when we are engaged in a whole lot of physical activity, when we're doing lots of emotional kind of growth and wrestling with things, and when we're learning a whole lot of material. So actually, college students probably should be getting more sleep than anybody. And the stereotype is true. They're probably getting less than anybody. And that's a bad thing. They're not going to learn as efficiently. They're not going to grow and manage their emotions as well. And they're not going to grow physically as well, because sleep is that restorative for our emotions. It helps us sort and consolidate memories. It helps us build our bodies back physically as well as our nervous system. So sleep is an essential part of just healthy life. So we need to find better ways to make sure that we're getting enough sleep. Little kids, of course, because they're growing so much, they need even more sleep than that benchmark of about 8 hours of sleep. But our teenagers, no, they shouldn't be staying up late, waking up early for class. Some schools have started trying to accommodate this by later start times because, teenagers, they're going to stay up late, right? And so we better make sure that they get enough sleep by starting school later. Well, you might try that solution, but then that starts running into a different feature of the circadian rhythms. And that is, most of us are day people. We are a diurnal animal. That is fancy talk for we're meant to be awake when the sun is up. Most of us. It's probably about 70% of us. Estimates in this regard are hard to pin down, and they vary. Experts disagree, but it sure seems like the vast majority of us, the supermajority, are meant for daytime. And it's not hard to understand why that would be. As an animal species, that's what our visual system is good for, is for daytime kinds of lighting conditions. It's when we can see well. We're not really good at navigating in the dark with our eyes. We don't have super sense of smell for navigating in the dark, and our hearing is only okay. So we're kind of daytime animals for the most part. What about that extra 30% of people who might be true night owls? Well, it is suspected that they may be night owls as kind of the night watchman. You might think that, especially in ancestral conditions, it's important for a small percentage of the population to be awake when other people aren't. Just sound the alarm if disaster is coming, whether it's a forest fire or predators or enemies are sneaking up to attack, that kind of thing. But by and large, then, in ancestral conditions, we would have been awake during the day, with a couple of exceptions of some people who woke up really early. You know, those old people who wake up really, really early before dawn. They're on sort of the early patrol. And a small percentage of people who stay up really late. Most of us, though, would be somewhere in between. That would be our regular lifestyle. And we wouldn't have artificial lights to keep us up late, to make sure that we can stay awake. We, of course, harness fire a long, long time ago, our ancestors do, and that begins to allow us to start a push on how late we can be awake and how early we can wake up. It gives us a little bit more protection from predators who don't like fires so much. And so that starts changing the way that we think about sleep and when we can sleep. But it really radically changes, of course, with the invention of indoor lighting, especially gas and electric lighting. And we don't see that becoming widespread in humans at all until about the 19th century. So less than 200 years ago, this starts spreading, and of course, mostly among the wealthiest people. And so staying up late starts becoming a sign of wealth. Having that late dinner was a way to show off how wealthy you were, because I can keep the lights on later than everybody else, and we can have those late dinner parties. And now eating late messes up our circadian rhythms and makes it harder for us to sleep in our proper cycles too. That's our now inheritance for most of us. We're surrounded by artificial light, which is screwing up our sleep cycles and also our eating habits, such that then in turn screws up our sleep cycles. So it's not a surprise then that insomnia and other kinds of sleep disorders are run amok. Not just electric light, noise. I mentioned in my episode on noise how especially people living in urban settings are constantly bombarded by noises. That too disrupts our sleep cycles, especially noise at night, naturally enough. If a plane or a helicopter goes over your house in the middle of the night, or people are drag racing outside your house down the street, or sirens are going off, yeah, it's hard to sleep. And that feeds into a negative kind of sleep cycle. So that's the situation we're in. What can we do about it? Well, you do have some control over these factors that you can exercise. Some of those things are, get a good sleep mask, maybe wear earplugs so that, I know it's hard at first, but you can get used to wearing earplugs and a sleep mask to get better sleep. Room darkening blinds, things like that to avoid the light pollution. When at all possible, reduce the amount of extra light in your environment, especially in evening hours. When the sun starts going down, start dimming your lights a little bit. Let your eyes gradually adjust to lower and lower light levels. Have lights on only where you need them instead of bright lights everywhere. Turn down those outdoor security lights that probably aren't doing you any good anyway, other than showing burglars exactly how to get into your house. Blue light, especially from our electronic devices, are starting to cause us problem in terms of our sleep cycles because it's disrupting our circadian rhythms. The amount of light going into our eyes, and especially the shade, the particular bandwidth of the light, so blue lights, have a direct impact on our sleep and wake cycles. So tuning that out is a really helpful thing to do. Setting up very regular rhythms of sleeping and waking is really important. Our bodies do manage to accommodate shifts and changes gradually, but it's really important to train them up for now it's sleep time. Here's my regular sleep routine. Here's when I wake up. Here's when I go to sleep. Try not to eat too much, too close to sleep time. Not only is that good for helping you sleep better because sleep is disrupted by digestive issues, but it actually helps keep our weight into a healthier range as well if we can not eat too close to bedtime. Another thing that you can try is to eliminate using our digital devices, especially social media and other kinds of artificial stimulation from our electronic devices, including television, movies, and so forth, too close to bed. I know a lot of us get into the habit of using TV to wind down. Be very careful about the kind of content, though, because it could actually be amping you up, not winding you down. I mean, not all television is baseball, right? Okay, I'm not just picking on baseball. I know lots of people, my father included, who would turn on baseball every weekend to take a nap. People do it. It's a thing, all right? I'm not just being mean. We know. Maybe that's a sleep aid you could try. If you're finding you just can't get enough hours of sleep at night, do consider taking a nap. There's no shame in taking a good nap. I love a good nap. And a really simple way that research suggests is a very effective way to take a nap is the sort of coffee power nap. And it goes like this. Drink a cup of coffee. Say this is, say, 2 p.m. Drink a cup of coffee, not a bowl of coffee, but a small cup of coffee, and then lay down. Set your alarm for 45 minutes. It'll take you a little while to relax, calm down, and fall asleep. The caffeine will hit your system right around the time that your alarm is going off, such that then you wake up feeling refreshed and ready to go again. I find that actually when my mood is sagging, my energy is sagging in the afternoon, if I do something like that, it helps me get a new lease on the day. I'm more chipper, I'm happier, and I'm more productive in my work as well. Even if you only have 15 minutes, sometimes even a 5 minute power nap can really make a difference. So consider that. Consider taking those short naps in the afternoon. Most people find that a long afternoon nap actually can make them more sluggish feeling. But at a certain point, if you're struggling with real sleep deficit, that is, you haven't been getting enough sleep for, maybe a couple of weeks, taking an hour and a half nap isn't a bad thing in the afternoon if you can manage it. Just it's usually best to get that nap finished by 4 p.m., somewhere around there, because otherwise it's starting to get too close to evening time and will run a risk of disrupting your nighttime sleep. So those are some suggestions for trying to manage our sleep a little better for yourself. But those of you who are parents or child caregivers or work in education at colleges, universities, high schools, really, really consider actually restricting the number of activities that you're scheduling for young people late at night. We really shouldn't be keeping kids up late unnecessarily. They need sleep more than anybody else, and we've started developing cultural patterns around them that are actually keeping them up late, which is not doing them any favors, leading, it seems, to anxiety, to depression, to all kinds of unhealthy habits and behavioral patterns, as well as just emotional deregulation. Have you been around them these days? A lot of these folks are not well emotionally regulated, and part of that is they're sleep deprived. So it's not entirely their fault. We've culturally done this to them, partly by saying, oh no, they're teenagers, they'll bounce back, they don't need so much sleep. So let's try to be more thoughtful about that. Sleep is an absolute need for humans. We need that roughly 8 for most of us. For those teenagers and college students, 9 might be even more appropriate. So let's try to take sleep more seriously. It'll lead to a better life for you and those around you. Those are my comments on sleep. As always, if you've got questions, concerns, hostilities, comments you want to write to me, please do write those in the comments. I do try to answer questions. If you've got a topic you'd like to hear me talk on, please write that as well. Otherwise, like, subscribe, share this with other folks, and come back for another one of these episodes. I'm Justin Barrett. Thanks for joining me today.